It's the summer of 1518. In a city strained by hunger, disease, and fear, a woman stepped into the street and began to dance. There was no music, no celebration, no reason anyone could explain. She danced for hours. When her feet bled and her body collapsed, she was helped back to her home. The next morning she returned to the street, and she danced again. This is Still Unexplained, brief explorations of unsolved mysteries. My name is Mark, and this is the story of a moment in history when an entire city appeared to lose control of its own body. So it's July of 1518 in the city of Strasbourg, France, then part of the Holy Roman Empire. A woman known to history as Frau Trophäa stepped into a narrow street and began to move. Witnesses described her movements as frantic and compulsive. This was not dancing for joy or ceremony. Her arms flailed, her legs shook, her face showed strain and distress. She danced for hours under the summer sun, with temperatures likely exceeding 30 degrees Celsius, about 86 degrees Fahrenheit. By nightfall, she collapsed from exhaustion. But the next day, she stood up and resumed dancing, and people watched. Within days, others began to join her, men, women, young and old. By August, contemporary accounts suggested as many as 400 people were dancing uncontrollably through the city. They danced in marketplaces, alleyways, and churchyards. Some cried out in pain. Some screamed. Others moved silently, eyes unfocused, bodies jerking as if pulled by something unseen. Doctors recorded swollen feet, broken bones, seizures, and extreme exhaustion. Some dancers collapsed and did not rise again, and still the dancing continued. Faced with a crisis they could not understand, Strasbourg's city council consulted physicians. Their diagnosis came from medieval medical theory. The dancers, they said, were suffering from overheated blood. The cure, they believed, was more movement. So the city made a decision that seems unthinkable now. They built wooden stages in public squares, they cleared out guild halls, they hired musicians to play drums, pipes, and fiddles. The idea was to help the dancers sweat the sickness out of their bodies. Instead, the opposite happened. The spectacle drew crowds, fear spread, people believed they were witnessing divine punishment, often attributed to Saint Vitus, a saint thought to curse sinners with uncontrollable movement. The belief itself became contagious. As panic grew, the city reversed course. Music was banned, stages were dismantled, the remaining dancers were loaded into wagons and transported to a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus. There, priests performed rituals involving holy water, prayers, and red shoes meant to lift the curse. Slowly, the dancing stopped. Whether the rituals worked or whether the crisis simply burned itself out remains unknown. Later accounts claim dancers were dying at a rate of 15 people per day. But this is where the mystery deepens. Contemporary records from 1518 do not confirm a specific death toll. The most dramatic claims appear in sources written decades or even centuries later. It is possible that some people died from exhaustion, heart failure, or injury, but it's also possible that history has amplified the horror. What we know for certain is this. Hundreds danced, many collapsed, and the event terrified an entire city. One common explanation is ergot poisoning, caused by a psychoactive mold that grows on rye. But there's a problem. Ergot severely restricts blood flow. Victims experience intense pain, loss of circulation, and gangrene. People suffering from ergot poisoning can barely walk, let alone dance for days on end, which leads many historians towards a different explanation. In 1518, Strasbourg was under immense strain. Famine had driven food prices to historic heights. Disease was spreading, including syphilis. Religious anxiety was constant. People believed saints could punish entire communities. Historian John Waller argues the dancing plague was caused by mass psychogenic illness, a physical expression of overwhelming psychological stress. Not fakery, not madness, a collective breaking point. When fear has nowhere else to go, the body may become the messenger. Seen this way, the dancers were not possessed. They were expressing something they could not articulate. Fear, guilt, despair. In a world without modern medicine, therapy, or scientific understanding, movement became an outlet, and belief carried it forward. Once people expected the dance appeared. The dancing plague of 1518 is not just a historical oddity. It reminds us how closely human beings are connected to one another, how belief, fear, and expectation can move through a population like a current, and how unexplained events are not always about monsters and miracles, but about what happens when human systems are pushed beyond their limits. No one knows exactly why Strasbourg danced, but the event was real. It was recorded by doctors, priests, and city officials. It cannot be dismissed. It sits at the crossroad of history, psychology, belief, and mystery. A moment when the body spoke louder than reason, and when an entire city moved to a rhythm no one could hear. This has been Still Unexplained. Thanks for listening.